Well, this is weird.
I'm making you nervous.
Sarah, my wife, what are you doing here?
Oh, I'm just here to talk about one of my favourite shows because season 2's coming out.
Yes, Severance Season 2 is coming out and we want to talk about it since we really love the show. And so, yeah, Severance came out in 2021. So it's been 2021, 2022?
It's a COVID baby, right? Like it was during that time that it was made. The first thing I need to say about the show is that it's just so well cast.
Adam Scott is perfect.
There's no one I feel weird about or like they did a weaker performance than anyone. I think everyone is there and they're doing what they should be doing.
Yes, it's shot wonderfully. It's presented brilliantly. It's for us, a 10 out of 10 show. I saw a thing where someone said, is there any plot holes? And the writer said he felt the only plot hole for him was that the bins being collected on 2 different days is weird, even though he wrote it.
Yeah, it is weird.
I don't even remember there being we've rewatched this really recently.
Remember the whole phone calls when he's ringing up the neighbour and he's like, it's not recycling day today.
Except for us in Australia, it's different weeks for us, different weeks for different bins. So
when I look back on it, I'm like, I can't really think of anything that is glaringly a plot hole. Or I'm asking questions like when I watched Westworld, you're always going, well, hang on, how does it work? How do kids work? Or like, can these random people kill robotic kids? Like, how do the guns work?
I think the beauty of it's season 1, so there's not enough for there to be plot holes yet. Like we're just asking questions. I don't know, for some reason the show really scratches something in my brain and I really, really like it. I'm not normally like a sci-fi person per se.
Well, really, you don't, not to comment on you, but you don't get sucked into something so hard. Like, a piece of meat, unlike me, who'll be like,
this is my personality for the next year.
Yeah, House the Dragon all the way. I'm reading all the books.
I half chalk it down to just the like sound motif of it. I don't know what it is. It's so good.
Yeah.
I do think the scoring and the whole thing, the music, everything is, I don't know, just one of those, when a show has every single department putting their whole bussy into it, if I can say that, it's great. There's nothing to fault.
In the wake of Black Mirror, you got a lot of these shows that went, we've just took one of those concepts and worked it all the way through. So when I saw this show, I'm like, it's like a Black Mirror concept, but they're just building it out. And you can see it in Black Mirror. What if I could go to work and like, the Adam Sandler film Click, could just skip past this boring part and go home again.
I'm sure they'd love that comparison. It's just like Click, but a TV show.
I think the Kevin quote of like, some days I just wait for the break.
Most days I just sit and wait for the break.
It's like, what if you could go to work and just simply, it's the end of the day again.
And I feel like you have that sort of stereotype of, the dad that never switches off and he always brings work into the family situation.
Yeah.
So I feel like that at its core is kind of where it starts of, if you could just switch off your work brain and just enjoy time with the family.
Yeah.
That'll be better. But then, will it actually be better? Question mark.
In the first episode, when you go, that seems like it'd be a great idea. The idea you can just skip the work day. But then the show quickly shows you, depending on the lifestyle you have, just what a lonely existence it could be. So for our main character, Mark, played by Adam Scott, who lives alone and his wife's recently died, he thinks it's a good thing that he doesn't get to think about it for 8 hours a day. But from his experience, that's all he thinks about. He wakes up thinking about how his wife's dead. He drives an hour to a building, and then the next thing he knows, he's walking out the building and going back home again.
And he's essentially taking any other human interactions that he has at work that would distract and kind of help with the grieving process. He's deleting 8 hours of his day or whatever.
Yeah, even though it sounds like a pretty complicated storyline, it's actually pretty, simple. It's got a great, hook. And that is, we get this conspiracy. And the setup is that these people, there's only 4 of them, they all work, they all do this job, they don't know what the reason is for. It's a relatively simple job of just organising numbers in folders based on the emotional response they get when they look at the clump of numbers. And even though it shows you very openly that we're walking through a lot of open, dead spaces, and it's weird that when we finally get to our job in this empty, huge space, we only find 3 other people. So it's already making you, if you're not realising it, you in the back of your head, you might be going, it's a lot of space for just 4 people.
Because the whole thing is this mystery thriller type with a semi-sci-fi sort of painting over it, that it's just asking you questions in the background that you don't realize you're asking from the get-go when you're walking through and you're seeing empty departments and then coming in and seeing, okay, was this actually bigger? Is this, how early on are we? And we're kind of unraveling that it is still early stages in a way, not super early.
That Lumen is this huge company that seems to have its fingers in all the pies. There's an early conversation when the friends go, oh, aren't they in tech? No, I thought they were in medical. And
Yeah, pharmaceuticals and stuff, yeah.
there's a mystery about the company.
It's the driving force, right?
Yeah.
Of like, what are they actually doing at work? Why would they need you to be severed?
And they reveal that this company has what we felt this like, to us almost Mormon-like, that they have the innies, and the setup is that the innies don't know anything about the outside world. They have concepts, they know what the country is, they know what the world is, but they have no idea of like the current history or anything. It's not really delved into too much, like, do they know what World War One is? Like, they just seem to know what the states are, but they don't know anything else. So at one point they think it might be an apocalypse, there might be nothing up there, and then they let themselves imagine what the situation could be up there. And what is revealed that they've all kind of been beaten into this situation, that even though when Heli is introduced and she's rebelling against it and she wants to leave and thinks it's so scary, and the rest of them are like, no, it's fine, it's revealed that they all in so many ways got beaten into this with the whole
The punishment start ramping up, and you see Milchick is very obviously sickly sweet from the beginning. That's overcompensating for something.
That he's actually managing them. And
starting from like one of the first things we noticed in the first episode that we liked, because you see a lot more of Mark as an outie to begin with, and you see the sister dynamic, which we love. We love seeing the simplicity and the ease at which that we believe that they're siblings. They have the small amount of random nonsensical references to stuff that we don't need to understand, but it helps build them as real people. That you do that with siblings. At least I do that with siblings. You put on dumb voices, or you pretend,
there's
little
all these
role
dumb
play stuff.
in-jokes that only you get, that aren't that funny, but only funny to you. She seemingly has a partner that's so strange. He's this pseudo-intellectual who's writing self-help books that are dumb, that are bad and silly.
Like a sort of failed author that's now stumbled into his niche of being a self-help men's, maybe mental health. Probably not too red pilly though.
With all his friends, and they're having, a dinner without a dinner, if you remember. And there's this weird idea, at least for me, maybe it's just the comedy, but they're all idiots in different ways. You spend your whole day being intellectual, that then you overthink obvious things, where they go, oh, Mark used to be a professor of history, and he goes, well, could you explain why the World War One was referred to as the Great War, not World War One? It seems so strange. And he goes, well, they wouldn't have called it World War One back then,
because World War Two hadn't happened
World War
yet.
II happened.
That's why.
Of course. That's absolutely duh.
That's so true.
But it is that I think the character work is so strong in the show, which drives it through, because I feel like that's at its core. It asks questions, but ultimately you're there just with these characters for so long, learning about them and seeing their interactions. And that dinner scene is so weirdly important for all those characters to see. Everyone has an echo chamber, and these guys' echo chamber is people trying to like compete intellectually with each other, that they smell their own farts too much that they become dumb again.
They become dumb again.
It's almost like that cycle.
So then you feel like he's releasing his book to an echo chamber, that the only people who read it are other people who write books.
And that would be why Mark doesn't take any mind of it. He doesn't really want to read it.
It's what they say sometimes happens in these university fields. They all just read each other's papers and all reference each other's papers, and all of a sudden they're not actually figuring things out themselves. They're just echo chambering themselves, which is obviously, when they're discovering Severance, which is literally echo chambering yourself, it comes across fairly ironic. But the main thing is that for Mark, Innie, his best friend at work, has suddenly left. And usually there's meant to be a countdown. They're leaving in a few weeks. There's a video. They celebrate farewell. There's watermelon. It's just he comes in one day, and from his perspective, wave goodbye, and then 2 minutes later he's told he's never going to see him again. And even though they know they work outside and they live outside, for them they're effectively dead and won't exist anymore.
You're all just going to stand here and let him die?
That they will never see them again. And then they get a new worker, which is Heli. And Mark is now thrust into the managerial position suddenly. And even though Irving, who is the senior member and has been there a year longer.
3 years. Which is such a small amount of time, which I think maybe...
Which plays into a theory with Irving.
There's a lot of things, but also could it be that it's just that young of a company? Who knows?
Yeah.
But he's the most rule-abiding.
Yeah, he's the most rule-abiding. He knows all the 9 core principles of Keir, which I think it only exists in the Severance space. I don't think they're up there going, here's our Bible of Keir or something.
As you watch through the show, you see how religious undertone it is. Like, it's solely really connecting to this weird cult-like religious foundation, but that's what we see through the severed floor.
Yeah.
Is it trying to make a point of hiding that, and on the outside it's just a corporation? Like, is it making a bigger point about corporations having this weird undertone that no one really finds out about, or is it just that that's what they do down on the severed floor to keep them going?
But we get small reveals with Miss Cobel that she maybe was a part of like a summer camp thing as a kid, and she was a true believer in it. So she seems to be, at least right now to us, the most devout, truly believes in care, and maybe has some kind of medical history that made her devout. We remember that bit when she's crying in the last episode. But the setup is that Heli is a new person, and we get to see what it's like to be reborn as a severed person, and you immediately reject the idea of it. You don't want to know what anything is, and you realise that in a quite horrifying scene when she's asked questions that she instinctively thinks that she should know. Like, what is your name? She laughs at the idea of it, but then realises she actually can't remember her name. Yeah,
the horror of having your entire memory wiped besides stupid state names.
And that's how the show opens. And then Mark is silhouetted as this
faceless.
They present
it so scary.
And then we then see the build-up to Mark's perspective. And as we point out on our third rewatch, how Mark is, for whatever reason, set up to fail by Mr. Milchick.
Yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic with him, because you think... Because it's Miss Cobel, Milchick's the sort of underling to her, which we don't see too much of.
He's like the floor manager or something. He bounces around.
But we don't see like a tension between them too much.
And he's the only one. Like, you don't think about it till a few episodes in, where you're like, he's the only person whose job it is, who's not severed, who bounces around between the different departments. And we don't know how many there are.
Yeah. And then he's seeming like he's being helpful, and Mark's there saying, I don't even know how to start the script. I don't know where to go from. And Milchick says,
just start at the first question.
Start at the first question, start at the survey. And he goes, okay. And then that's the thing that sets him up to fail, is that he starts at the questions. And then Irving's like, you need to start with the preamble. So it's like these small things that feel like intentionally Milchick's doing, which is really bizarre, because you wouldn't want to stuff it up with the reveal of who Heli is.
Yeah.
This is like a high stakes thing that they should be times 10 anxious about.
And they're filming it like an Apple documentary. Kind of like it's meant to be a pro-Severance.
The black and white.
It's meant to be
dramatic.
like a pro-Severance story.
Yeah.
In world, I'd love to see what that documentary or whatever presentation looks like, because she kind of hates it the whole time. There's not really many moments when she's pleased to be there.
No, she's definitely like, it's Stockholm syndrome. Like, if that's the only thing you can do, you kind of eventually have to learn to accept that this is it and try.
Remember the best episode of Black Mirror, when it's the Christmas episode where it's revealed that the house AI is like a part of you that gets surgically removed, and then from that perspective she feels like she was that person, and she's been removed. And the way that John Hamm breaks her down is he just makes her feel like she's been in there for a year doing nothing. He just speeds forward time a year, so when he comes back she's like, yeah, I'll do anything as long as I'm doing something, I'm happy. So then she happily just becomes this AI for the real fun. And then with these guys, at first you think, oh no, they all seem kind of pleased and happy to be doing this. It's revealed, at least in Mark's case, he was beat down, and he did, like, we hear the I'm sorry, you just don't mean it audio tape from whenever that was, and Mark says, well, when I first was severed, I threatened to kill Petey, who was on the voice on the other side. And this gets into a fun thing that they're in cells, almost opposite versions, or
it's like, it can be opposite, but also you still see at the core, like, their core principles of who they are as a person, or how they've kind of made themselves before severing.
Well, that's it.
Impact the way they do eventually turn out.
The real world experience has been stripped away, so now they're just their core selves again.
Yeah.
So Mark, we're told, maybe was a positive person before his wife died. Was a bit of a chipper
history
guy.
teacher. He would have just been happy to.
But then Irving, we assume, is this kind of with the rock music and the art and the fact that he's, his dad was in the army.
His dad was in, like a Navy SEAL or something. So we think maybe
he was this rebellious youth, maybe.
Or maybe had a similar, like, he went through a Navy or an Army situation.
Yeah.
That's why he not loves rules, but he follows rules, because that's what he would have been so heavily drilled into.
Dylan, who's the most, just loves to work. It's the only thing.
I'm going to get my rewards, man.
Yeah, one of the rare few who's accepted his existence.
Yeah.
and just does that.
Excuse me.
Hang up. Quickly.
The inciting incident is that Petey is not dead, and I mean, he's not removed, is that Petey is magically managed to make himself unsevered, and has now approached Mark on the outside, who doesn't know who he is, and he's trying to tell him that there's some weird shit going on down there. And we know there's some weird stuff going on down there because we expect it. What's interesting about the show is that outside Mark almost doesn't do too much. After the initial episode or two of like, this guy I work with is living in my basement, when he dies for whatever reason, Mark kind of goes back to trying to have a normal life, and only towards the end, very small, is he given, like, from this woman who used to be a part of Lumen, the one who came up with the technology, is now trying to rebel against it herself, gives him a master key card only because she killed the one security guard who followed him.
Yeah, and that's the thing, the question of the size and scale of everything, because you do have one floor manager, one seemingly just a face manager with Miss Cobel. Like, what is she really doing if she's not floor managing as well? And one security guard who she's got a thing with.
And then one wellness director who even though she's presented as the therapist, just reads off the key cards facts about their outies,
which we think are all fabricated, because I don't think any of them really align, do they?
Although the only thing that you noticed out was that Irving's one, we thought that's weird, was your Audi loves the sound of radar. Then it's revealed that his dog is called Radar. So there is these kind of weird, and there's this sense that they kind of know emotionally who they are. Like Petey tells Mark, you carry the pain down there with you. It's like your memories are gone, but your body's emotions. And
your whole nervous system is still intact.
There.
It's still doing that.
It still feels the trauma.
I guess, with Petey and his... I think it's safe to say that the unsevering is what kills him. Like the whole time Petey on the outside is having these almost like borderline aneurysms constantly, like he's bleeding out his nose.
His brain's trying to make sense. He talks about the relativeness of like that. His work self's first day at work is the equivalent of like his 5th birthday in the real world.
Like dog years type of thing.
The dog year thing, like the relativity is all out of sync. Which it's not meant to make too much sense because it's never happened to anyone before.
No, because it's meant to be impossible, right?
And it's effectively two personalities merging. It's like Petey has existed in one way for years, and now he has to. It's like a Jekyll and Hyde trying to having a hand each on the wheel or something.
I can understand from a devil's advocate, and let me just say this, but like you can understand the company, like Lumen's perspective of we don't want them to unsever because we don't know what the ramifications are, and we've seen that now. Petey, his innie was rebellious, and now it's ultimately killed the Audi as well. Like, it's a death sentence.
Throughout the series, all 4 of them at different paces realise that they want to try and break out for different reasons. So Heli's all about trying to break out, but because Heli is new, we get to re-experience things. So there's these times where like, we're going to go to the Museum of Keir, where we go and see so where we get to see the 9 almost like royal family or Pope-like figures. Yeah, and
it's like they're meant to be the CEOs as they've been passed down, but I feel
like a family thing. It's like it's a privately run company. They get passed
Keir's
down.
Not meant to be that. Like, is the company that old?
Kids, it feels like, I think they say it's like late 1800s this stuff kicked off.
Yeah, wow.
So it would be about 8 or 9 people when you think about activity and stuff.
And now we're on James Egan, right?
He's all the names are really odd. Like James and, Heli. Like that, they're not, they look familiar, but they're just off. Like Keir is a name, but it's a pretty unique name. It's Kieran or something.
They are these sort of common but slightly maybe old-fashioned or slightly just not as popular names.
And what we get the sense of is that we don't know how long Severance has been here, but Lumen is actively trying to discourage interdepartmentary connections because when that happens, they start not liking their situation. So if you keep them dumb and just the rats in the maze who get a treat, they'll happily keep working. So we think, at least, that maybe there wasn't a rebellion, like and it's just a propaganda to keep them away from from going over to the other departments to hang out.
Really trying to avoid the word.
And what we get with Irving is that Irving is constantly, even though he's the most committed, he's seemingly dropping off at work and visualizing ink falling out of the room for the keyboards. And it's revealed that his outie every day on his time off is painting the same image, which at first you think's the elevator, but then it's revealed at the end with Miss Casey, we think it's this kind of mind wipe situation where they reset you up, which then makes us think that Irving maybe has been in the company longer but was mind wiped, and now his outie is constantly trying to figure out what that was or something.
It's to the testing lab. I don't know if you said that, but
Dylan, the most committed one, who seems to be against any kind of he's the most stagnant for most of the series, where Irving is falling in love with Christopher Walken,
which is interesting because he's so steadfast. He's that pillar of let's do everything that is right and righteous and what we've been told in the handbook. But yeah, the minute, and it is probably meant to be that poetic, but as soon as love comes into the picture, anything can change.
Yeah, there's any emotional response, and Christopher Walken's character is weirdly in charge of putting up all artwork relating to the history of the company.
Yeah, O&D, which is something in design, was it?
Yeah, and they're 3D printing objects that get placed.
Yeah, there's a watering can. They don't know what the watering can's used for.
And even them, even though they're a 12-person department in their room, it still looks like there probably should be 50 of them. Because there's so many 3D printers that aren't being manned. Yeah,
and it brings up the first sort of interesting part about the departments in whether or not the paintings of these big uprisings and rebellions against each other is real or not, because you have O&D being told to push the narrative that they're a 2-person department and that they aren't actually 12 people behind a wall. There's just 2 that are the only front-facing, and is this all potentially intentionally placed?
And they see versions of the art that are different, like Mr. Milchick, we think, purposely sends an image of that to the printer. So Irving can see it in order to discourage Irving.
They would be on a completely different network, surely.
Yeah.
They wouldn't want any risk.
Well, yeah, because we see that all this...
I'm just thinking, I was like, hold on. They wouldn't, because they're on these old machines.
Yeah, so they can't be hacked into.
So they don't have
off
any,
the grid.
Wireless, any Wi-Fi, any internet, anything. So why would the printer that they have in their room
it's
be
all
wireless?
On purpose.
So everything's...
It's very clearly meant to be Milchick going, stop doing this. But Dylan is the most steadfast against any kind of...
Yeah.
He just wants it to be, and he's the most committed to the work. He's got the most prizes, because he's 75% refined. He gets finger traps, he gets the cartoon drawing of himself.
Yeah.
But then if you are the number one refiner, which I think is either the quickest or...
I think it's maybe the first to hit 100%.
The first to hit 100. You get what is just known as the waffle party. And we see examples of parties throughout the show.
Yeah, little incentive meals.
So you think, oh, it's just going to be one of them. And then if you are paying attention, they only feed them healthy food. We don't see their pre-made lunches, but it's a lot of fruit. It's a lot of stuff that is probably good for the mind when you're refining.
Well, and I take it further and I wonder, because we see there's a melon party and it's got watermelons and I think rock melons and all types of melons there. And then there's the coveted egg party that Dylan said, this is the best one. This is the egg party.
Yeah.
You're lucky to get this. All the watermelons circular. I don't know if they're
shaped weirdly.
Doing this weird production design choice of circular things with eggs.
But they make it so it's like finger food. You see a lot of the watermelons are just so you could pick at them.
Yeah. I don't know. To me, it's very symbolic. I'm like, you've got religious undertones and you've got eggs coming in as the best party. Is there some sort of weird fertility life thing being symbolized here that we're going to uncover eventually, or the things that they're giving them to eat are so bizarre?
But then when he gets the waffle party, we reveal that it's not just a simple Mr. Milchick coming in with honey and waffles. It's you go to the in perpetuity wing, you go into the replica house of Kier's childhood or home. You sit and eat waffles at the table, and then you go sit on the bed, put on the Kier mask. Then when
horrifying
people we can only assume are related to Kier's life, the wife, whatever, and they are...
Yeah, because one is dressed as a bride.
And they are in lingerie, and there's one man, and they're all people, and you can only assume because he's sitting on the bed, this is meant to be an orgy. But he does it because you're left alone for the evening. Everybody goes home.
Yeah.
And we then reveal that because security is dead, that means that they haven't even figured out how to even say he's dead yet.
Yeah.
Or how to even deal with it. That this place is so undermanaged that they just kind of control under the fear, under the implication that we're always watching.
Yeah.
That they're not always watching. Turns out the reason why Dylan is always wanting the waffle party is probably because it's the only time he gets to have intimacy.
I mean, we've watched this series so many times, and to me, every time I watched it, I always interpreted it as that this was the first time the weird dancing was happening, but you're right, it mustn't be, because he doesn't look that surprised. He does go to the bed, but he still reads the plate, which I guess is probably just for the benefit of the audience.
Yeah.
But he's had the waffle party before.
Yeah.
We know he's had it multiple times, so why is that character acting a little bit like it is first timey for this particular part to be happening?
Just because he's thinking about how he's not there for that. Like, imagine maybe the first or second
he's
time.
Sad.
Maybe the first or second time he was wolfing down the waffles, but now he's just trying to give his people enough time to get in their positions.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's this whole underlying product thing coming on, and what it's revealed to be is that Heli, the CEO to be, is actually Helena Lumen.
Not Lumen, Helena Egan, and she's the daughter of James Egan,
who is the current CEO, king, really, of Lumen.
Yeah, I don't. Has she taken over yet, or is this meant to be her like proving her worthiness?
We think it's her proving her worth.
Yeah, making it this big show and dance of I think everyone should do it because I'm willing to do it.
And then to fight against the anti-severance movement that we see and
every
hear
now and
different now and again. To say that, no, look, I'm the CEO's kid and I'm going to be in charge of this and I have an innie and I'm happy, which then makes all of Heli's
refusals to
even more interesting
quit.
because you know her arity would be going insane.
Yeah, and her innie recorded a tape threatening to cut off her fingers, and if I also control this body, so I will kill it if I have to. Yeah, you think the outside would be completely, never mind, I'll quit, it's not worth it.
Particularly when she hangs herself.
Yeah.
And we're thinking the first time through going, it's weird that she's not quitting.
Yeah.
And that's because she can't afford to quit because she's the face of this company.
Yeah, it can't fail.
It can't fail.
Which is even weirder why we don't have heaps of employees there looking after it. And, you have one security guard running the whole level, which ends up getting killed because on that outside, the girl that gave the key card murdered the security guard, which was linked to Petey.
Because he was trying to deal with this.
Yeah, the security guard's trying to clean up everything.
It's really that small of a situation. He doesn't even have underlings or that, and there seems to be this fear of the higher ups, the board, who we never see. We don't even know if the board is. We think James on it. We think James maybe was the only guy when he said, "Is the board even there?"
Yeah.
Maybe it was him who said yes.
We do hear some mumbling every now and then.
It reminds me a lot of, you haven't played it, but did you play Control?
No.
It's really, in Control, you take over basically like an X-Files FBI, and the board are exactly the same. It's a muffled sound, and you don't understand what they're saying half the time. And so I was thinking, is this some kind of... It won't be paranormal. It is just these higher up 1% probably, but
they do always plug it into the computer and stuff. So whether
they
it's these
seemingly
weird...
are always there, and they exist through this woman. She's who is the assistant to the board, but speaks on the board and hears them directly. And this whole pressure that Cobel's under is seemingly because Heli's in the department. And we want to make sure that all this is going fine for the big promotion, for the big push that Severance is good. And then there's this whole other thing that we don't understand what's going on with Mr. Cobel, and that is, why is his wife not dead? Why is she down there with him?
Well, we haven't mentioned that reveal yet. Jesus, you're scrambling, buddy. The security thing to me is weird as well, because they set up that really subtly with only a few lines and looks that Cobel is in this sort of affair with the security guard.
Didn't she say yes, daddy, at one point? Or yes, master?
Yes, something.
And he's like, shouldn't we celebrate later? And it's the whole thing of the CEO is always in charge of people. Maybe enjoys being dominated in the private life, And it's
such a strange thing to reveal and put there, because maybe it was their only way. No, but she would obviously find out that her one security guard's not turned up to work the next day. You know what I mean?
But she does. I think when she walks in, she's told pretty quickly.
Eventually.
He's dead.
Yeah. The waffle party is the big thing on the second last episode, where Dylan then goes into the security booth. He's read the thing. He knows all the switches to flick to override because they've realized...
It's happened to Dylan before.
Yes.
Because Dylan's big motivation
is... him not being stagnant is...
Because he has one moment where he realizes he has a kid, and then, as we're saying, that emotional response that I have a kid, it means he starts breaking down this severed person. So the most committed becomes almost the most rebellious.
Again, it's like this motif of love, or these family connections and stuff. And all because Milchick's the one that's now having to run around on the outside, like the security guard. Is it the fear of they don't want people to see that they've stuffed up? Dylan stole a thing from O&D, a little card, which is also weird. Like every single thing that happens in the show asks another question. You have a diagram that looks sort of like Tai Chi, sort of like self-defense, because there's two people in the image, and he just takes it because he's like, oh, I'll steal something. It's going to be maybe useful. So Milchick has to get that back. And that's what, in having to override the system, none of them knew was even possible. They don't even know if the people that their bosses and stuff are unsevered. They don't know that information, I don't think.
Mark's outies idiot brother-in-law, his book that through hilarious circumstances ends up in Mark's hands, which is a hint at how under-prepared these people are. That were told, I want you to read over this in case there's hidden messages for Mark. Like Miss Cobel is obsessed with Mark to the point where she's living next door to him, pretending to be a kind of florist salesman, acting older than she really is. She acts like she's a woman in her 70s who's a little bit airy-fairy.
And it's Lumen housing as well, which is the weird thing.
And
but
they're
there's
the
only
two people who live there. And there's this whole like Lumen maybe runs the city, like maybe owns the city, who knows? Because the mayor is also on the board.
Yeah, there's obviously like political links that are setting up.
The sister meets a woman who it's revealed is severed to give birth a little bit, but that the idiot brother-in-law's dumb self-help book becomes the rebellious manifesto for Dylan and Mark. And it's not played up in a silly way. There's bits where they're just reading it and you hear like what was our favourite one?
It's like a lyric video almost in the background with it all coming up.
He says how something is rooted Latin word for like phone.
Oh, camera. What is it? I can't remember. Camaraderie has the word camera.
Camaraderie has the Latin root word to camera, which is to take
photos of a group of people.
Yeah, it's like why would the ancient Greeks and Romans have camera as a? But it's that type of shit in there. But both Dylan and Mark read it and find really inspiring stuff. To that when Mark's in his outside, he basically fangirls over him. Yeah, he's like, oh my god.
It's almost like introducing a some religion that they're like, I can question the handbook I've been given and go by a different handbook.
Something that you might be hearing it's culty. Like these cults will limit your education, will limit other texts.
There's no other books, there's nothing. Like you literally go in and you plug into the computer and that's it. But yeah, so the waffle party is a big distraction. Dylan switches the override so that the other three will essentially, as their outies, wake up as their innies.
And hopefully tell someone close to them what's going on and that down there they're not happy.
Yeah.
And that they're doing weird shit. There's some goat stuff going on over there.
Yeah, there's really small things, undertones. And like Miss Casey's been there, she's getting fired now, going to the testing lab.
Like the way they get punished is inhumane.
Yeah.
They get put in a room and they're made to repeat a speech about being sorry. It's just Milchick is deciding when he's had enough.
Also crazy because if you're the only like manager of the floor,
you have hours in a room. Why are
you spending hours in a room? Which I guess
they think if you do it once, it won't happen again. So if you just really hit them hard the first time. When they get out, Mark's at the book launch, basically. Miss Cobel's there weirdly, so he's having to play it cool with
Selvig,
Miss Selvig, which is
she's there because she's helping with the breastfeeding of the sister who's had a new baby.
She's insisted on being involved in Mark's life. Turns out the big reveal there is that Mark's wife, this wife who's been dead, even though it's revealed to us before, an episode before, is Miss Casey, this seemingly very weird but lovely
robotic. She's not woman. Weird, she's a very robotic woman as how she's presented.
Is actually his wife, who isn't dead. Who we think died in a car crash against a tree because Mark's Audi approaches the tree at one point and cries.
And that's another interesting thing because when he's in his wellness session and they make the clay, he makes what we assume is the exact same tree. So if there's a blend of Audi and Innie coming together, when she's there, they put her candle that he'd had in her, because Miss Cobel grabbed the candle out of the like dead wife box and then brought it into the wellness session for Miss Casey to light. So he's essentially been reminded about this person. Will you still remember them?
And also because she's suspicious that Mark is doing what Petey's done. Is maybe pretending, has been unsevered. So she thinks if I dangle his wife in front of him, he will react, because why wouldn't he react?
But the interesting thing is that she doesn't just say, oh, take him to wellness, test him one more time. She does the same thing for Miss Casey. She says, I want to test Miss Casey again. And she seems to be the most unhuman, broken down person.
And she watches almost euphorically at one point when she's watching these sessions. She's almost like, and you're not sure if it's because she's just so happy that these two people who should know each other don't know each other. So she's seeing it like, Lumen, Kier's vision exists. I don't know. We don't know what. All we can get is that she's a very devout person in a religious angle.
But she is more euphoric in the times where they are being human. And he's saying, it's unfair that you've been fired and I want to help. Having this instant connection of wanting to care about each other. And then when they break that and Miss Casey goes into, your Audi does this, that's when Miss Cobel's upset. And then Milchick's like, this is a good thing. Why are you sad about it?
That's the sad reveal we get, that Miss Casey is a permanent innie. And she only exists when wellness sessions happen.
Yeah.
So she basically just has half-hour moments with random people where she reads a card off at them. And then what's very funny, please don't have an emotional response. You lose 10 points.
Yes.
And so she just reads the bullet points.
I think we tallied it. It was like she's had essentially
7 hours.
8 days or
something like that.
Equivalent of life, or 13 hours
and
or something.
And then the 8 or 9 hours in which she had to follow Heli around was her good old days, because it was the longest stretch in which she was awake. Yeah, it's just really quite sad. And, the actress does a really good job.
She does well of having this utter deep sadness behind her eyes whilst just trying to be professional, which is so bizarre. It'd be such a weird thing to have to try and act out.
And she doesn't know how to interact with people, because she only interacts with them in this professional manner of just, I talk, you don't talk. And then we laugh at every time that there is a in and out door to just one room.
Yeah, that's got to be...
It's just a dumb humour thing, but
I don't know. I feel like everything's going to be set up for somewhat. Maybe I'll get disappointed next season.
They're next to each other and they lead to one room. Like, why would there be an in and out door? It's just dumb, but it's funny. But with her, she gets what's happened to Irving is that she gets mind wiped, and she's probably going to be repurposed somewhere else.
Maybe just like factory reset. That's the big season 1 cliffhanger, is that Mark is awake as his innie, as his Audi, sees the photo of Miss Casey and
knows that's his wife.
That's the big thing. And he yells that out to the room filled with people and his sister, who
While
his sister's
holding the
getting
photo.
clued in on this weird stuff, and the innies had the conversation with her about, I think something else is, like, we don't know what we're doing. We just think something bad's happening. We don't know what it is.
And Heli's publicly telling people, I am the innie. This is horrible.
Yeah.
And we do finally meet her dad, who is he's
knocking on death's door. Looking
very
CEO.
weird guy.
Speaks, and I feel like it is meant to be that sort of cult leader. Like, he's very soothing, high-toned, weird voice.
Bored up with everyone around him, sort of worshipping him.
Yeah.
But so she tells everyone, we're fucking miserable, stop this right now, I hate it. And it's a press conference promoting Severance and how the story of Heli. And we see all these photos of her seemingly happy, where they've grabbed moments where she's pleased.
Yes.
But then
all the photos that Milchick takes.
Exactly. And then the show has you asking, which I really like, what I brought up before, it has you asking the right questions. They're questions related to the narrative. Was when I watched Westworld, not only was I asking questions of, like, the narrative questions, I was going, well, if the gun can shoot through the train, how does it know that it can shoot through a train and then not shoot for a player? Or, like, how does all this work exactly? Like, if people are just going to Westworld to kill and be abusing to robots, then how is their families there? Like, are those families with here? Though I'm asking all these, I'm asking
only
the correct,
asking the relevant questions.
Yeah.
And it does do well of explaining things, especially with Heli coming in. They've essentially made it the most. It makes sense for the world for us to be learning everything with her. But we see the parameters. Okay, the severance only works in wherever they tell that technology to work.
She can't get any kind of message up there.
No,
she can't ride the skin. She can't swallow a note. She can't do anything, because those are the things that, like, a CinemaSins will go ding. Why don't they just send a message up the elevator? Just trying to nitpick plot holes. Where with this, it feels, as of right now, airtight. So, going into what we are expecting for season 2. Season 2's been a long way. I think you pointed out that the DOP left the project.
Yeah, I was looking up some of the credits, and because I really like the cinematography, I think it's amazing, and it's just
a Ben
good.
Stiller directed thing, mainly.
Yeah,
he seems to be the main visual.
But they have got, I think, one or two other people that are now Yeah, they're down as the DOP instead of her. I don't think she's even doing one episode.
And then I think I remember there being, I'm not sure if it was the writer, but there was some kind of behind the scenes drama of somebody left who was involved.
Yeah, I think there's a couple more people doing just 1 or 2 episodes here and there.
But what is exciting, at least, I mean, we've been here before, but the initial reviews, I'm not sure if these people have watched all 8 or 9 episodes or 10 or just watched the first 4 or 5. It's currently sitting at 100% positive season 2. And then from the trailers, it seems like we're going to be expanding even more the departments. We've got more we've got what's her name, maybe from what's the actor's name from Arrested Development.
I don't remember
her name. Brienne
Who?
of Tarth is going to to be there, like that actress.
Gwendolyn
'cause
Christie. I've been pretty in the dark
You
of
haven't
trailers because I just
want to go in fresh.
Yeah, I'd love to go in blind with this sort of stuff.
The questions we're left asking is, one, what's going to happen to these characters? I think the thing that we want to illustrate is that unlike other shows like Westworld, I actually give a shit about the characters, and I want Mark to somehow find Miss Casey, and that seems to be Mark's probably motivation is I need to find my wife.
I'm so worried, and I really don't want her to not be real. I just really want her to they've staged her death. Because it would be so disappointing for it to be like, oh no, we've just the goats.
Cloned her.
But I feel like they confirmed that there's no cloning. Cloning's not part of it.
They said that in a recent debunked on YouTube saying, and the first thing was, well, what you need to think it all is that the macro data refinement is refining incorrections in DNA.
Yeah.
But they've said no. They've said it's not a cloning thing.
And I'm seeing a lot more theories, especially because another weird thing that's there the whole time is the Lumen branding and the water drop, and you don't know what they do. There's a lot of theories around them actually doing something in terms of like maybe water. I think there's a folder that flicks through a bunch of names. People are saying that they align with different water reservoirs in America or something. So like, are they actually sifting through water? The folders that they sort them into have the 4 different temperaments, I think is what they call them.
Which Keir points out, which is why one of them, we're only told directly one's scary, but others are, and we're told like,
what is it?
Nihilistic, like they're worded weirdly, or like the fancy words for like fear, love, hate, like happiness. So they pick clusters of numbers that give them the feeling, and then they put them in there. And we're just left, what are they doing? And then also, was there once a bigger department, and is this maybe a situation like the second Matrix film where this is like the 4th or 5th time we're trying to do this Severance stuff,
and they're cutting funding, and that's why there's one person on each department.
Yeah, that this stuff only works if they have less people to interact with. Like we were saying, maybe once in the initial version they gave their innies a day off. That maybe once a day they went and did fun, like that they weren't just working every day. But then as they've realised slowly but surely, it doesn't work. The moment the innies are allowed to have any kind of semblance of life, they rebel. So they have to just be, as I said, the rat in the cage. They can't be anything else.
That's the thing. It does feel like there's a potential for it to all just be like every single thing is an experiment. Every single person's been put in for a different experiment and a different... Because like the hallway, it's literally like a rat in a maze. Like it's that sort of basic scientific testing of all the little hallways that all look the same. How do these things react if we change this? So if we drop that painting into the printer, how do they react? Like it feels like they're doing all these little tests, and all the different departments have different things.
Like what if, even though they're not, but what if the board are just severed people told they're the board, but we don't know. And I think my worry is, and I don't think it is, but the problem is what happens with someone like J.J. Abrams would be, you're really good at setting up the mystery, but then you actually don't have anything behind it. Like Stephen Moffat would do that. Like he'll have all these cool mysteries in like the Doctor Who that are revealed to be convoluted nonsense. I feel with this though, I do feel like the writer, it just feels like it has all been figured out.
That's the thing. They've been very confident with that. I feel like in their press, though, that they know where they're going with it. It seems like, or like they know that they are confidently writing something equally as
But
good.
then I always think, I don't know if people overthink it, but the big thing in these big nerdy communities like with House of the Dragon and Last of Us is there seems to be a big need in marketing of like, don't worry, we're following the text, or with this case, we've planned it all out. Which
Yeah,
kind of came with, I think, the new Star Wars trilogy of people being annoyed there wasn't a plan.
Yeah.
That they were just kind of improving with $200 million or something.
I feel like it's the risk of that genre though as well, of
The mystery's always
sometimes
better.
the fun is the questioning. For me at least, I almost religiously will turn off or not watch the last part of a film or the last episode because I'm like, well, I know what it's going to do now. It's told me pretty much everything. I don't need to see the falling action.
And I don't want everything to be made clear. I don't want it to be however far they go, season 3 or 4, and by the end we're like, oh, we 100% know exactly what happened at Lumen.
You want a few mysteries?
I'm okay with there being still just... I think sometimes that helps with an audience. Like, you know, The Last of Us is coming on, and since I'm replaying Last of Us, I keep thinking I prefer the ambiguous ending of part 1, that the idea that in part 2, it's like...
I prefer everything with part 1, but that's for another
But
day.
no. Ellie does figure out what's going on, and she reacted this way. I prefer the ambiguous ending of we don't actually know what happens with Joel and Ellie, if that relationship breaks or not.
That's us personally. We prefer it to be open-ended. We
Ambiguous.
want to have our own interpretation. It's art.
Which is what with this, I'm hoping that the focus is more on the character progressions and how that, which I think it will be, because Westworld, the famous example is Jonathan Nolan got freaked out that Reddit guessed everything. So for season 2, rewrote it because 2% of people guessed it.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, the other 98 were like, no, we
liked it.
Yeah, we
liked
know what's
that
going to
was the
happen. We
thing.
want to just see it unfold.
Yeah.
And with Severance, there never seems to be super strong prevailing theories. Where with Westworld, they really did figure out a lot of things before the reveals.
There's just so many rabbit holes you could fall down.
Yeah, because there are things that, they were kind of like dangling it right then and there. Like her insistence on make sure Mark has a wellness session. At first, you just think it's just her going, it's just to make sure her guy's fine. But
Every time I watch it, I always go in and forget almost some things that develop because I'm like, oh man, I just really like that Heli and Mark are just platonic. It's so good that they're just platonic, and you can tell they care about each other, but it's just, Mark has a PD-sized hole he needs to fill. He just wants a Bezzy made at work. And then they take it there towards the end and I think it's probably my only gripe. It's the only thing I don't like.
is that they kiss?
Is that they do have a kiss in that last bit, but if that's all you know.
But then we said they give themselves an out because she goes, in case we never see each other again, or maybe in case we do, which then means in season 2 they might just completely mothball it.
I don't feel like it's justified.
There's nothing in the show that reveals that they would be intimate.
No, I think, and there's so many questions and so much tension
She
already.
actually's kind of fucked off at him for a lot of the season.
Yeah.
It's probably the first young female he's ever been around.
Yeah, but that being said, you still have him interacting with Miss Casey.
True.
So they're either going to double down on the fact that there's no way their innies are ever going to realize each other. But I just feel like Mark, the person that we know as an innie, would feel weirdly for Miss Casey that he wouldn't want to do that with Heli, but then he doesn't really react in a nice, or he kind of acts indifferently when she does it, doesn't he? When she kisses him?
Yeah, he's kind of
a bit
surprised
like,
by it.
okay, but then maybe
It's
he does
more her
like it.
thing.
I don't know. I feel like it's an unnecessary element being
It's
added,
your
but
one.
they're probably going to explore it
It's
in
what
season
makes
2,
a 10 out of 10 a
unfortunately.
9.9 maybe. Yeah.
It's what makes an 11 out of 10 a 10 out of 10, sadly. It's my one thing.
I don't think they're going to bottle it because, you don't want to be here going like you do with some shows. Oh, just watch season 1. I don't know how many seasons they're planning on doing. Considering it took them, I know they had delays for whatever reason, but it's taking shows longer and longer. And we were saying if this show existed 15 years ago on HBO, it would be the show.
The show. Well, the same way Westworld was kind of like that when it came out.
It would be Lost. It would be Breaking Bad level of popularity.
Yeah. And it's the battle with streaming services and stuff of trying to retain that culture of TV that we used to have of people coming together and discussing stuff.
Apple are trying to do it with the weekly
episode.
thing.
Yeah.
The water cooler discussion at work that like Game of Thrones built off and Breaking Bad built off. That every week you're going, oh, did you see last night's episode?
Yeah.
Which the Netflix model suffered from, where you'd have a nerd like me who would binge all of Daredevil in a weekend and then would have no one to talk to about it.
It's what we, being film teachers, is what we have to teach our students, is the whole cross-platform, multi-platform way of engaging. We want people to, so TV shows need people to go and discuss, and they want them to interact with other things to boost engagement and bring people back to the show.
And I think Apple are pretty, they've just done this attempt at like a viral marketing, having the actors in a glass box.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pretending to be working in an office.
We're prisoners! She's alive!
Hopefully this waffle and this novelty of having a husband and wife duo, husband and wife.
Why are you questioning that part?
I don't know if it's wife and husband.
This isn't the mystery.
No,
this isn't the mystery part.
He doesn't know which one he is.
Yeah, that's what it is.
I think overall we're just really excited.
I want every single one of you to give me your weirdest theories about it, because there's just so many things that we forget or we skim over. So please comment down below.
What's up with the goats?
What's something you reckon?
What's
Because
up
yeah,
with
the
the
goats and the painting as well. Anyway, I'll go off on one again.
Oh god, it's crazy that this is such a simple setup too. It's like it's a great example of, it's just an office mystery basically, but everyone's in, but you're into it.
It's character work. It's the
just
same thing as
character
Severance. It's
work,
character
yeah.
work. We're just here with these people. We just want to learn about them. But it kind of takes that grander, like, the whole point is that you're asking, what are they doing? Why are they doing it? And that's like, they're very much grounding that in life. Like, what is your purpose? What's your purpose when you're working? What's your purpose outside of life? Like, they're kind of rooting everything in that, which we still as humans, everyone questions in different ways and aspects and yada, yada, yada. So it's kind of pulling that innate mystery out of you to watch someone else explore that topic, I guess. Just watch it with us.
Yeah, we might be here with Dan. It might be the three of us doing it.
Who knows? I could be a one-take wonder and that's it. You never see me ever again. Edit me out. Let me dissolve into the chair.